everyone, this is still me, Martin Wiese, and I'm glad that you're joining me today with my brand new screencast video. Today we're going to have a look at the brand new Neon Drifts expansion for Retrologue 2. A very cool one, by the way, I can tell. The name of the demo track I created specially for this expansion is called Fate Takes Its Course, and it's a journey into the darker realms of cinematic music again. Every sound you're going to hear today is taken from this Neon Drifts expansion, and I'm now, by any means of the word, thrilled to show these new sounds to you. Let's go ahead. What I want to do in this video is to demonstrate not only what cool presets come along with Neon Drifts, but also how I tweaked and modified them to fit exactly what I wanted for this particular piece of music. For this being effective, I organized all the tracks in 6 main categories that I want to focus on today. But before we start, let's lend the thing an ear so that you get a first glimpse of what this expansion can sound like. Have fun! Now that you've heard the final result, let's start dialing into detail. What I want to start with is this signature opening sound right at the beginning. As you can easily see, I even didn't create an own preset, but I still modified it a bit. Let's try out a direct comparison of both sounds. And again. There are 3 main changes that I did to the sound. First is a simple high cut at around 8 kHz to get rid of the hissing on top. I did that with a Cubase EQ on the channel strip. Second thing I did is lifting the cutoff a little bit to get more of this twang at the beginning. The last but yet very important aspect I worked on is the amp envelope. I lowered the sustain level because I wanted to have the initial part of the sound standing out. I then tweaked the decay until I got exactly that feeling that I wanted for the beginning. This sound is quite complex because it has two distinct aspects. First is this twangy attack, second is the LFO pulse within the sustain. Let's now look at the second sound I put into the bass folder called Big Pulse Bass. That's the preset coming right out of the box. And this is what I did with this preset. What I did here is quite simple, but it does a lot to the sound. I lowered the cutoff of the low-pass filter to 45 Hz to get this moody bass flap that I wanted for the beginning. I then lifted up the distortion level and resonance a bit to give the sound a bit more grip. Then I modified the Arpeggiator pattern. Let me open that. As you can see, the most important thing is reducing the additional modulation of the cutoff via controller 1 over here. I still left some subtle changes to let the sound breathe a little, but this effect is indeed very sublime. After the initial part of the intro, I use cutoff and pitch bend to create a little shift at the end for the first and the third 2-bar phrase. Listen to that. The sound I've called High Flap Arp is the next signature or outstanding sound. The sound is not that different at all. Let's quickly rebuild the sound from the original. I just lowered the attack within the amp envelope from 18 to 14 milliseconds and within the filter envelope to 11 milliseconds, which makes the beginning of every note a bit what I call flappier. And I then lowered the cutoff to 90 Hz. Let's redo this. Different arpeggiator pattern, but listen to the difference. That's what I did to the sound. Original sound. So from 18 to 14, from 16 to 11, cut off to about 50 Hertz. And let's listen to the sound again. This preset makes a beautiful use of the envelope and tube distortion within Retrologue 2 in combination with the 18 dB low-cut filter. I like that sound a lot. Hans Zimmer and Howard Scarr, a famous sound designer who has done a lot of work for Hans Zimmer throughout the years, used these kinds of sounds in The Dark Knight. Maybe you recognize them within the soundtrack of this gorgeous movie. It's one of my favorites, by the way, in the past decades. The hook bass line of the track is established via these two instances here called ARP Bass and ARP Distorted. Sound-wise, they are left completely as they are in the corresponding presets. I just programmed my own arpeggiator sequence. The little sound tweakings I did for mix reasons. These two instances are a typical example for layering sounds to create a richer tone or more expression or dimension that only one sound can't achieve. ARP bass is for the bass range of the sound. While ARP distorted is for the upper range of the frequency spectrum. You may recognize that the sound of ARP distorted covers some kind of complete backbeat while still being a bass. Together, the two sounds form a solid hook bass that cuts through the mix without sounding overprocessed. Our bass alone. And again together. Let's now head over to my favorite sound. I called it Drahtseil, a very soundful word in German. I didn't change the sound compared to the preset, as you can easily hear. I just inserted my own arpeggiator pattern. If you have a look at the main part, you can see that Drahtseil comes on the top of the original hook bass sounds. It adds more energy and power and helps the track move forward. Now again with all the other stuff. Funny thing is that throughout the whole first minute, harmony is staying on the same chord, a simple E minor. I'm reading discussions within composer forums so often where the matter of harmonic complexity is discussed and when a progression is A level or good quality. And that makes me smile a bit because when you listen to all the so-called good music, it simply doesn't matter how many chords are used, but if all the parameters that are used work perfectly together. In this track, the second chord appears after the first minute and marks the climax part of the track. And for that reason, I have 4 tracks of Drahtseil here, because the pattern is stretched over 2 bars and appears in minor and major key. While talking about harmony, let's have a brief look at the only real pad sound of the track, simply called mid-pad. Only subtle changes here too. I lowered the volume of the 2 oscillators, I lifted up the distortion level and dialed the cutoff a little bit down. Then I deactivated the 2 modulations, and you see that here, and EQ'd the sound to fit in the mix. As you can see, I got rid of all the low end because the pad shouldn't interfere with the hook bass. At the end I slightly lifted the top end to lighten things up, and there we are. Let's listen to both of the sound in comparison. Or some kind of chord like this. The same. Let's listen to the main part with and without the pad. as I'm saying so often, some sounds you recognize only when they are missing, right? Two other sounds establish the upcoming harmonic range even more, and they are very interesting to analyze too, because they are quite obvious in the mix, but how they are done, it's quite interesting. Let's have a look. The distorted lead is a preset I didn't change. Xenomorphic, the sound I used as lead double, I tweaked a bit. Let's look at that. When deactivating the Arpeggiator on the initial preset, you hear that I crunched the sound a bit. I slowed down the modulation from 4/4 to 8/4. I'll show you that. See that here? 4/4, 8/4. And added a new oscillator with another sawtooth wave to get a little more crunch and richness into the sound. Later, I killed all the low end for the sound being used as a melodic one. Let's listen to both layers soloed, combined, and then together in the mix. And the double. And combined. What you can see in the editor page is that I've separated them 1 octave from each other, and I created some kind of offset. We're here at 102, and here we start at 116. And this all together with the two different sounds creates this richness within the sound. Now, main part again with all the sounds. Funny for me too, because I didn't imagine it being that back in the mix. A third layer that is used as a shadow sound for these two layers is the piano. The piano supports the pad chords as well as doubling or rephrasing the two lead layers. Nice effect. I love that for the piano. Adds a feeling of reality and dreaminess to the part that no synthesizer could do that smoothly. Let's add the pad and later on the drone to the sounds and hear what happens. Here comes the drone. All these little sounds that I can't discuss in detail here help to create this huge sound that is, by the way, all in the new Neon Drifts expansion. Really powerful stuff in there. Let's now have a brief look at the two percussion elements. As you can easily hear, the two sounds don't have much in common, right? And indeed, I nearly built this sound from scratch, but the starting point still was this shifting gears sound because I liked the flapping in there. I only used the noise, nearly killed all the modulation, and created a driving arpeggiator pattern to push things further in the main part. To create a wider stereo image, I doubled the sound, panning them hard left and hard right, and used a slightly different setting with more distortion and higher resonance for the left layer. The result is a very wide and powerful percussion unit. And within the mix. A completely self-designed sound is the barrel drums over here. I created these sounds with the white bandpass filter noise and the good old 24 dB low-pass filter. The cutoff is triggered via velocity to make the sound darker at lower velocities. The room does the rest to create the metal effect. Let's listen to that. You hear, the harder I'm hitting the key, the lighter is the sound. The lower, the darker it is. Low and mid in comparison. For the ensemble image of these barrels, I doubled the sounds and set them off a few ticks. You can see that here. And if you watch all of them together, you see this irregularities here. The melody is delivered by 3 layers: theme lead soft, and lead clarinet. You can see that theme soft is a reduction of theme lead, and the clarinet sound does what the clarinet does within the orchestra very often. It helps connecting the upper woodwind instruments to the strings. The same effect I used here. But let's listen to the different sounds in direct comparison. Much softer and reduced, and the clarinet. Really cool sound. The clarinet layer, playing 1 octave lower, connects the melody to the hook bass and creates a fuller image of the main theme. Maybe I've played them a bit too low at the beginning. Let's take the time. These two combined. Now let's listen to them all in combination and add the lead clarinet. Let's mute the clarinet. As a last little aspect, I want to mention the 3 effect sounds. These sounds I always add to spice up the whole thing and to help the form to develop more clearly and more emotional. What I call whoosh is a simple noise sweep with a cutoff modulation. Megahorn sweep is a modified version of the motion sickness preset from Neon Drifts. Let's just listen to the part without the effects, and you can easily hear what they are doing. What a difference, right? Again, with all the effects. Okay, there we are at the very end of this walkthrough video. I hope you've enjoyed this really quick ride and we meet again soon on this channel. Stay tuned, bye bye.